everyone. Warm welcome from Southern Africa. If you'd watch my intro video before I get started. I want you to know two things before we get started. The first is that I'm innocent, and I want to reiterate that. I was ripped from my life and loved ones for years and spent a decade in prison. The second thing I want you to know is that I'm not free because I'm no longer incarcerated. My freedom means a lot more than that. It is a deeper freedom. And it is my road to this freedom that I want to share with you today. It all started one weekend in December 2000 when I went on a fishing trip with friends to my fishing resort on Lake Kariba. Late one afternoon, one of my mates and I decided to go tiger fishing on the lake, leaving the other guy bream fishing in the river. On our way back, we spotted two fish poachers in a steel boat, who immediately upon seeing us started paddling hastily for the shore in an effort to get away from us. Knowing they were notorious poachers, I drove my boat towards them to scare them off, and the wake of my boat tilted their boat, causing them to jump out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep, and they were about 3 meters from the shore, and soon scrambled to dry land. My friend and I then watched as they ran away into the bush, thinking nothing more of it. The following day, the police arrived and accused us of drowning one of those poachers. To cut a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police, and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in Zimbabwe's prisons, of which 5 were removed as remission. Unbelievably, my co-accused only got a $10 fine and was set free because he was not driving the boat. On the 3rd of April 2003, during the height of the political lawless land invasion chaos in Zimbabwe, against police evidence, without a body and on presumptions, I was convicted of drowning that poacher. The shock was inexpressible. I was innocent. I was a successful, self-made businessman with a high standing in the community. Utterly humiliated, my life changed forever. I shared a cell with 78 other inmates, 13 meters long by 3 meters wide. Each person had 33 centimeters of space marked out on the walls in chalk. That was your space. The toilet was a stainless steel bowl sunk into an open 1 meter square cement block in one corner, as you can see in my sketch there. We were packed like sardines, with legs all crossing over in the middle, lying on our sides. We all faced the same direction. When you turned over, it was all together. As cushioning against the cold concrete floor, you'd fold 2 of your paper-thin, worn-out lice-ridden blankets several times to fit your space, then covered yourself with a third one. Your clothes were wrapped around your toothbrush and toothpaste, or they'd get stolen, and that was your pillow. From sleeping on those freezing hard floors, my hips had bruised black rings for years, and shoulders still give trouble today. Can you imagine the discomfort? Not even the breath you take is your own. No space, and packed so close together that what someone else exhales, you inhale. Can anything be further removed from freedom than that? And yet, physical freedom is one thing. You can deal with it. We all can. By living in the moment to survive. But freedom of the mind and soul, that is something else. That is true freedom. We had no basins or taps in the cells, and only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. So we had to wash our clothes in the cell toilets at night wearing a blanket, then hang them on the walls with smuggled book staples to dry by the next morning. 3 or 4 of us would get together and take turns to wash our clothes because one garment had to be used to block the toilet to allow the toilet bowl to fill up when attempting to flush, the water only ever dribbling slowly. Then we'd wash the clothes on the cement blocks surrounding the toilet bowl, dipping them in and out as we washed, as you can see in my sketch there. At about 5 a.m., we'd take the slightly damp clothes, place them on the cleanly swept concrete floor, and rub the creases out with a prison-made sponge. Then fold them neatly, place them in a pile, put a hand towel over the pile, and stamp on it hard with bare feet, leaving them perfectly ironed. Another hour hanging on the walls, and they'd be ready to wear. Imagine wearing the clothes you're wearing now for 6 months without a change. Then, in an effort to retain your dignity, having to wash them in a well-used toilet. The humiliation was beyond comprehension. In 2005, during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, Harare city ran out of water. For 3 years, while in Chikaribi maximum security prison, each prisoner was allocated only 1 plastic cup of water a day. 1 cup of dirty orange city runoff water from a nearby dam, carried by farm prisoners. That was to drink, clean your teeth, wash your face, bath, everything, for 3 years. That's us sitting in formation, waiting for our 1 cup a day. I have learned that the most important things in life cannot be bought. Health, loved ones, and friends. In that order. During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 people die, primarily from malnutrition. It was during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, when there was no food outside of prison, never mind in there. After being moved to a medium security prison, during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 9, in 8 months, out of 1,200 of us prisoners at Harare Central Prison, 432 died. That's more than 1/3 of us in just 8 months. It got so bad in there that we became totally desensitized. There were guys dying all around us. Phil, my closest friend in there, and I were playing cards on the tarred floor of the crowded exercise yard one day, and a guy sitting next to me rolled over dead. No one around us moved. We couldn't believe it. So we just turned a little so we couldn't see him and carried on playing until prison or hospital staff collected him. That's how terrible it was in there. There were people dying all around us, and you could smell dead people continuously, day and night. However, that incident has always left me wondering why that guy died and I didn't. Why so many others lost their lives and I had the privilege of living. I'll never really know. But what I do know is that it taught me to be humble. When you could be the one dying tomorrow and you don't, you learn to be humble and grateful for every little thing about your life. And we have all in some way become desensitized to things in our community at one time or another. It is a surviving mechanism. But it also reduces compassion and humanity. It's a fine line to tread when pushed so deeply. But if you've lost the ability to empathize, then you have lost what it means to be human. My first evening at Karmaveer Open Prison, which is a farm prison where I was transferred after 8 years, I spent sitting around an open fire on odd logs and bleached cattle skulls, chatting with old Ndebele inmates, taking me back to what I loved so dearly as a child. And I remember getting lost in their interesting stories and the beauty of the sunset, the dancing flames, the tranquil call of an achar, and the bright stars and the moon, which I hadn't seen for 8 lonely long years. Now, I appreciate the everyday little things in life, like a soft bed, a hot bath, a spontaneous cuddle from a loved one, or catching a fish. Because those are the things you miss most when you have it all taken away. And there are things we know that rejuvenate us. For me, it has always been nature. I am, and will forever be, a farm boy from Zimbabwe. Nature's in my blood. Touching a tree, smelling the earth, the feeling of soil in my hands. These things bring me restoration. For you it might be hanging out with friends, dancing, reading a good book, or swimming in the ocean. Whatever is good for you, do more of it. Despite the hell I'd gone through, physically and mentally, the worst part was knowing that my beloved children were growing up without me. My proud son Dusty, only 18 at the time, was always full of ambition. And we joyously discussed and dreamed of making millions and plan endless projects and adventures. He was following in my footsteps and loving every minute of it, ready to take on the world with his dad, and then I was ripped away. My precious 16-year-old daughter Sandy and I had, and still have, an extraordinarily beautiful bond. Since a baby, she's always been my shadow. And especially she is to me, I am to her. But at 16, I was her anchor. I was everything in her eyes. She confided in me without boundaries and clung to everything I said and did. I loved them beyond expression. They loved me. And the times they needed me most, I wasn't there. They went through first loves, crushes, dances, 21st birthdays, and entered the wide world, and I wasn't there to see it. It is an annoying feeling knowing that I'm their father and should have been there, but I couldn't be. And I don't want anyone here ever to have to feel that way. Make enough time for your loved ones. I've learned not to let past thoughts hurt me. The past only exists in your head. It can only come to life if you let it. To be able to find positives in all the negatives going on around me in prison brought hope, which was a huge part of getting through prison life. And to be able to find happiness in even the smallest things that happened in prison kept me healthy. Those who couldn't died. Life in prison or in Las Vegas is still just life. It's what you make of it, no matter where you are. I had everything I could ever wish for, and in moments, it was all gone. The humiliation of being labelled a murderer in terrible conditions were extremely hard to deal with, as was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and were doing to me. I hated them bitterly, and initially would lie there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn: the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. Then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten about me long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they, blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness. I now know what Nelson Mandela meant by forgiveness. And for me, it was bigger than anything I could have achieved on my own. True forgiveness was inspired by God Almighty. And so was letting go. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I learned to live in the moment from then on. The past was too painful, and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith, because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. If you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you. Because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. We all want too much in our lives, concentrating on what we haven't got, instead of being grateful for what we have. For me, giving thanks to God every day goes a long way. For my health, a beautiful family, a lovely home, a soft bed, running water, and so on. When there's no food, no water, and people are dying all around you, you become grateful for the fact that you're still breathing. And another day is a blessing. When you lie in a cell with 78 other people, and your breath is not even your own, gratitude suddenly has a different meaning altogether. The healthiest of all human emotions is gratitude. Remember that and practice it. Having an attitude of gratitude is one of the most impactful habits for a fulfilling and healthy life. I wish I could express the happy, beautiful, bubbly feeling I felt as I walked out those prison gates to freedom after 10 years of hell. People don't appreciate freedom. And I've realized that even when we're not in prison, there are ways in which we imprison ourselves. In sour business partnerships, badly selected careers, being obsessed with money and ambition in the corporate world, even unhappy marriages. And it's only when you have your freedom completely taken away do you realize, in many ways, that you are actually in prison too. When I look back on it all, it makes me wish I could somehow get through to people how precious and priceless freedom is. Freedom is not just not being in prison. Freedom is the ability to make a choice and act in it. Freedom is